Hey everybody, this is ChiefsAngels.com. My name is Scott Butler. This is my first YouTube video and I wanted to showcase my breeding pairs and show my process for going from eggs on a breeding slate to my spawning jars to fry jars and eventually grow out tanks. So first I'll show you my breeding pairs. And I know the light's a little off, the sun's shining pretty bright today, but these are my Philippine blue clowns. These two will spawn about every 9 days. I collect and artificially hatch every third spawn just because they're so prolific and their spawns are usually 300 to 400 eggs that I'm a small scale breeder and I just don't have the space for that many spawns. This is my silver and Philippine blue silver breeding pair. Big male is the silver and then a slightly smaller female, and they spawn about every 12 days. And I collect about every other spawn for artificially hatching with these two. My newest breeding pair is a pair of platinums. They've spawned once for me, so I'm not expecting a huge success with that first spawn. The male really didn't know what he was doing, but he did follow and try to fertilize the eggs on the female, but he was more in a protection mode trying to protect her and the eggs than he was actually trying to fertilize the eggs. So I have the breeding slates in there. You can order these breeding slates from Angels Plus, or you can go down to your local hardware store, and if they have slate you can cut your own. But I try to get the angelfish to breed on the slates. Obviously you can't really control that, but regardless, if they do breed on a leaf of like that Amazon sword there, I'll cut that leaf and then I'll clip it to the breeding slate, and then I'll move it over to a spawning jar. I don't have any active spawning jars right now, but I do have several active fry jars, and basically they're the same thing, except when you go from spawn to fry you insert two sponges to act as a filtration system. And I have 3 fry jars right now. I have a silver, one actually from each of those 3 pairs, and I leave them in the fry jars until they're about 10 days free swim. Once they're about 10 days free swim, they're usually big enough that I can move them into a 10-gallon, their first grow out tank. This one here is for my clowns. There's nothing in there right now. This is normally for my silvers. I was not expecting my platinums to pair off since I only had the 2 of them, but they did, so I ended up having to switch my tanks around a little bit. And then there's my platinum initial grow out tank. But then I have larger grow out tanks for when they outgrow those. And here is a DD black spawn. I did have a DD black breeding pair, but they only bred the one time and then they just were no longer interested in breeding. They would try, but they were eating the eggs, or the male just decided he wasn't going to fertilize them anymore. So I moved them down to my community tank, and maybe they'll start again at some point. Maybe they won't, who knows. But my DD black that I did get, their very first spawn, I ended up with 17 fry, which is I considered lucky because normally the first spawn's not too successful. The males just don't have the fertilizing down just right yet. And it worked out to where I ended up with 17. So my silver grow out tank, this is a 20-gallon tall hex, and I have a lot of silvers in there. There's about 150 silver juveniles in there. Now I leave them in the 10-gallon grow out tank until they just start to get the triangular angelfish shape. And once they start to get that shape, they get a little bit too big for the 10 gallon, so I move them to a larger grow out tank. And then I also have a grow out tank for my platinums all set up and ready to go. And then I also have over here from a previous breeding pair I had that I just wasn't really interested in getting a bunch of pairs from. It was a male golden and a female silver. This is their one and only spawn that I had. According to Angelfish genetics, these should all be silvers, but some of them are getting the stripes of silvers while some of them are remaining a very golden color. So we'll see what we get out of these as they continue to mature. Now this tank is a little cloudy. I have a small bacterial bloom going in there right now because I didn't have a good baby brine shrimp hatch yesterday, and I had to put some golden pearl in there, and that resulted in a little bit of an algal bloom or a bacterial bloom. So I'm just going to leave that be. Normally I do 50% water changes on my grow out tanks every day, but with that bacterial bloom, I'm going to let that settle down a little bit and just monitor nitrates and only do a water change when my nitrates get a little high. My brine shrimp hatchery, I run 3 cones or bottles for brine shrimp. These are just empty soda 2-liter bottles that I cut the top off, or the bottom off, and inverted them. And I use a 2-liter. Everything you see online says a 1-liter bottle's fine, and they do work fine, but I use a 2-liter to try and keep the salt better contained. I found with the 1-liter bottle, salt tends to run up the hose and it gets on the wall, gets on the light, so I use a 2-liter to try and keep the salt better contained. So I have 3 going for 3 separate feedings per day, and I've had great success with baby brine shrimp. In my opinion, baby brine shrimp is the only way to go if you are going to successfully breed and raise healthy angelfish. I know people would disagree with me, but that's how I'm having the most success. Now on my breeding pairs, I think I already said that I do a 50% water change once a week on the breeding pair tank. I do 50% water changes every day on my 20 and 30 gallon grow out tanks, but on my smaller grow out tanks and hatching tanks, I actually do 90% water change per day. For filtration, I use sponge filters on all of my tanks, except for my 75 gallon community tank. I have a large canister filter on that. Sponge filters are fantastic. You'll see some hang-on back filters in some of these tanks. They're there, but they're not actually running. The sponge filters are so much better for beneficial bacteria, in my opinion, than the hang-on back tanks. But you'll notice I have a couple of sponge filters in here, only one of them actually running. Because this is a 20 gallon tank and I have so many juveniles in there, I put extra sponges in there for more beneficial bacteria, and it also helps with water changes. I can actually put a python hose in there and I can run water down into the sponge instead of letting water just drop straight down into the tank and hitting the angelfish. So tell me what you think of the video. Like I said, it's my first one. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to chat with you on YouTube. Go out to chiefsangels.com and check out our webpage. We're not shipping yet because I don't want to ship angelfish until they're at least nickel to quarter size. I know a lot of breeders will ship when they're anywhere from pea size to dime size. I've been on the receiving end of those fish and just not received super healthy fish and had high mortality rates with them. So I've decided I'm not going to ship until they're anywhere from nickel to quarter size. But let me know what you think, and I'd love to chat with you or answer your questions in the comments section. Thanks for watching.